right, and here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Strength for Your Purpose podcast. Really excited to have you here today on this episode. A couple of really interesting and inspiring interviews coming your way here in the next couple weeks, and it's going to start with this one. If you've been listening along, thank you all for listening. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, we appreciate the 5-star rate and reviews wherever it is that you are listening to us, and would love it if you would leave a comment, question, and always love the interaction with folks who are listening. Today, again, really excited about this interview. I am joined by Kristen Tripp, who is a young entrepreneur in Southern Maine and graduated from right here in Southern Maine, University of Southern Maine in 2019 with honors with a business degree, and pretty much immediately dove into her financial wellness coaching business, DaVinci Life Design. Also in 2018, she bought her first business, which is a science and arts summer camp called the DaVinci Experience. She's been running that summer camp ever since and is currently working on expanding into year-round childcare. She's also involved with Sunday school at her church. She lives in Portland with her husband, dog, and chickens, and is very involved with her community as the president of the Women's Business League chapter here in Portland. Kristen, thank you so much for joining me here on the podcast. I'm really excited to unpack some of this stuff and learn more about how you're helping people.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, of course. So tell us a little bit about, because reading through your bio there, you actually bought your first business before finishing up your college, correct? Is that correct in the timeline? So take us a little bit through what brought that on, and then kind of lead us into the financial wellness. I love that you call it financial wellness, because I think that's definitely a part of our health and wellness, and that's kind of what we're all about here on the podcast. So take us through that sort of journey of buying a business before you finish business school, and then starting your own financial wellness practice alongside that.
Yeah, so I've always wanted to be like a business entrepreneur. Ever since I was a young girl, I actually started my first business was selling chicken eggs. I used to raise poultry as a child, and I absolutely loved it. I saved up so much money. I was nannying, I was working all the time, and I got a commercial lobster license when I was a kid. And I figured I would save up all this money and I would buy a lobster boat and I would lobster in the summers and just make great money. But life did not quite go the way that I thought it was going to. And I actually, I lost a lot of my eyesight when I turned 17. I was diagnosed with an eye disease. And so I basically couldn't really boat. But I had a lot of money, just burning a hole in my pocket. So I was like, what to do with this? And I went to college, and I was going into business school and thought I was going to be a financial advisor. And I started teaching Sunday school for extra cash. I love kids and I love teaching and I love money. So I thought, and I love my church. So it just sounded like it'd be perfect.
Sure.
Well, there was a woman who goes to my church who I had known, and she liked me a lot, and she saw me working with the kids, and she knew I was in the business program, and she just so happened to own this summer camp, and she loved it. It was her baby. And she wanted to retire, but she didn't want to, she didn't want the camp to just disappear. She just loved it that much. So she asked if I would buy it. And she was like, I know you probably don't even have the money to buy it because, you're so young. I was like, well, actually I do.
As a matter of fact,
because as weird kismet events, I never bought the boat that I thought I was going to buy. So I actually used the money to buy the business. I was only 20 when I bought it. I remember her opening up a bottle of champagne and me being like, I will have it, but we are in a lawyer's office. I was a little nervous. But so I was kind of like, holy cow. And I just started running it and I absolutely loved it. But I also didn't really want to give up financial advising. I kind of ended up with these two passions of like childcare and financial advising. And so I was just like, well, I'll just see if doing both works.
Sure. Yeah. That's incredible. I mean, first of all, the drive as a youngster to want to be entrepreneurial at that age. There's definitely a difference between a kid with good work ethic, and a kid with good work ethic who also wants to like run a business. That's really cool. And the fact that you were able to find a second passion there is incredible. So where is the camp located?
We actually have quite a few locations. We rent all our space. We do all the different community programs, and it allows us to be very flexible. We kind of headquarters, so to speak, out of Falmouth, but we also operate at Freeport, North Yarmouth, Cousins Island, and Westbrook.
Awesome. Wow. So is that expansion happened since you took it over? Was it in one place, or were some of those in place already when you took the camp over?
Well, Judy, who was the original owner, she used to have it in a lot of locations. And as she got older, she kind of continued to contract it as she just didn't have the time or the energy anymore. So when I got it, we were basically one location. And basically I've run it this will be my 5th year. Every year I add a new location.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Awesome. So yeah, I mean, and it makes total sense that someone who is as entrepreneurial as you were, as even a kid with a lobster, fishing, a fishing license, and then the drive to buy a boat and all this, and buying this business, that you'd want to be pretty savvy financially and have your financial wellness in place. So tell me a little bit about how that came about. And I'd love to hear your take on the fact that you are helping people with their financial wellness. You're not just helping them with their money. Talk about your philosophy there a little bit as well.
Well, one thing that has always bothered me, it just gets me to my core. It happens everywhere, but I'm going to say it's an American thing because I'm only living in America,
Sure.
is that people equate success and even financial success with being rich, which yeah, but the thing is that everybody is put on this earth, in my belief. I'm a Christian person, and I think we all have these God-given talents that we're given. And God does not monetize our talents, but we certainly do. And I don't understand how we can come into this world and one of us maybe has this amazing gift to sing and perform. Okay. Great gift. And maybe another one of us has this amazing gift to be a counselor for children who are in abusive households. Okay. Also a really important gift and extremely vital in our society.
Yeah.
But one is making millions and millions of dollars a year, if they hit it right. And the other one has a capped potential, essentially, of, whatever the bare minimum is as the cost of inflation goes up, but, 30,000, maybe it goes up by the time you finish your career to like 50, there's such a capped earning potential. And it leads to burnout, and it leads to a huge group of people, whether it be teachers, social workers, counselors, et cetera, who truly believe that using the gifts that they are given in this world, that they're not successful. Like they look at other people who are making a lot more money and they say, we can't all be like them, and I ask that question, like, well, why are you different than them? You're giving your gifts in this world, and they shouldn't be monetized so low. They shouldn't. It's how things work in our world. But I like to really help people reframe their idea of success based on, are you doing what makes you happy? Are you actually changing somebody else's life or the world in some type of way? And do you have financial stability and are building wealth over time? Doesn't mean you need to be Ariana Grande and make like millions and millions, but do you have enough that you have savings if you really wanted to do something? If there was a pandemic that hit us randomly, would you be ready? Do you have insurance? Do you have the things that you need to have to be happy realistically with the career you've chosen? And I think those are two very different things, and people don't see that the way it should. Like they think, like those who can't teach. No, those who have a gift for teaching teach, and they just don't get compensated enough for it.
Talk about a gift.
I kind of always felt that way. My father, actually really my whole family, as just all blue collar workers, teachers, nurses, excavation, plumbing, construction, fishing. That's like everybody in my family, essentially. And my father used to always say that he wasn't somebody who was great at school. He wasn't somebody who, would just start quoting Proust at you, but he's a really good businessman, and he has a really great understanding of excavation, which is his chosen field.
Yeah.
And his whole life, people kind of would talk down to him or would kind of treat him a certain way, depending, who he's talking to. There's certain houses he goes to work for who they won't even talk to him or give him a side glance, because he's kind of the other essentially. But
Yeah.
he's like, over time, he actually made an extremely successful excavation business. And he always hated that construct of like how people see you just based on the profession you choose. And there's this idea that there's a right and a wrong, there's a success and a not success, and there's a rich and there's a poor. And I don't think that is accurate.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love a lot of what you said there. And I think the big thing I keyed in on is the way we see ourselves, right? The way we see really, and we're probably seeing it through other people's eyes, not necessarily through our own, because I'd have to imagine there are a lot of people out there who are making, 30, 40, up to $50,000, who, if they truly didn't love what they were doing, would probably go try to find something else, because they could probably do other things and make more money. You could find ways to do other things to make more money. But so you already have that passion. So yeah, I love how you were talking about seeing ourselves differently, seeing ourselves using our gift, and then just being slightly more, savvy, prepared, and again, financially well. That doesn't necessarily mean financially well off, but financially well, so that you're setting yourself up for your future, because that's entirely possible no matter what you're doing. We just have to kind of shift our focus and shift how we're looking at the situation a little bit, right?
Exactly. I was listening to this book. It's really good. I can't remember who wrote it, but it's called The Psychology of Money. And he was talking about this guy who was a gas station attendant, I think he was, and he graduated high school, I believe, but he didn't go any further than that. Worked as this gas station attendant, eventually in his like mid-30s, saved up enough to buy a house. He didn't really do much. He was kind of a recluse, and he didn't he didn't have a lot of expenses, and he ended up not having children. He did have stepchildren, and he did marry somebody, but he died at a very old age. And he had always been putting a little bit of money away at a time in the stock market. He died a millionaire, and people at first thought he had like pulled some type of fraudulent thing or had like robbed somebody or like done something. Like at first people were like, wait, what? And it made the news because people were just so shocked that a gas attendant could possibly be a millionaire upon death. But he was a saver. He believed in the power of compound interest, and he didn't have a lot of expenses. And that's honestly all it takes. And we don't necessarily all want to live that kind of life, but if you truly do want to build wealth, honestly, like a few years of buckling down, if you want a house, need that down payment money, just a few years of making some sacrifices and really working it is honestly all it takes. Depending on your income, might take a little longer, but it's doable. We can all find financial stability if we're willing to just sit down, focus, and commit to it.
Yeah, for sure. And I love looking at this from more of the psychological standpoint, because money is so much more emotional than exchanging paper or metal coins for goods, right? There's so much more of an emotional attachment there. So talk a little bit. I'm sure there are some things sometimes where you actually have to almost play therapist a little bit to people with their feelings towards money and how they're about to use it. And, talk to us a little bit about how our stress levels, our emotional attachment to, either the physical money or even just the idea of money, right? Because that plays a role for sure. Talk a little bit about how that might play a role, and what are some things even people can do that are, I don't want to say quick fixes, because there's no such thing as a quick fix in anything really, but what are some things people even can do right now that can help shift a little bit of their mindset and their focus on that like emotional attachment and stressful attachment to money?
Yeah, no, it's definitely very psychological. And I do kind of find myself sometimes having to say like, okay, Kristen, like you're not a therapist, don't try to be one because that's not your job. But
Sure.
I do have to kind of throw some thoughts out there about people's attachment to money, because we all grow up in like different circumstances and a different time frame. So our relationship with money, a lot of people, it's not even that it's a bad relationship. It's just very much based off of the environment. Like if you were a young adolescent that grew up during the Great Depression, your view and understanding of money is going to be vastly different than one who is growing up as an adolescent in this like 12-year bull market that we have seen.
Sure.
So, right, how you feel about throwing money at something, paying for services, trusting banks, trusting the stock market, how you feel about how much money is acceptable to spend on a weekday or a weekend night, and how you feel about saving and investing really all depends on how were you raised, where were you raised, what time period, and did your parents give you any kind of like financial guidance? And some of the things I actually, one of the tips I always give people, and it's especially for the spenders out there, because no matter who you are in this world, whether you're a spender or not, whether you're a saver or a spender, we all don't like to just give our money away. And so when people are going out for a night out on the town and they're trying to budget, I say, take cash. Do not take your credit card or your debit card, because you know as well as I do that once the drink starts flowing and you start getting a little more loose, you start saying, oh, another one, or okay, let's Uber to this next place, or I'll buy you your drink. And before you know it, you've spent over $100 out in the old port, which is like the equivalent of like 6 bougie drinks at like one restaurant.
Yeah, right. Sure.
But if you have $50 that you have in your pocket and that's all you have, then you are going to think really long and hard about like, should I order a $16 drink, or should I maybe like get like the 2 for $5 beers at, Rosie's or whatever.
Right. Sure. I love that, because it really sounds like you're almost flipping that sort of emotional attachment on its head a little bit and using it as good. Like it's okay to be, we just need to be a little more attached to it in certain areas and a little less attached to it in other areas in order to allow it to work for us. Right. Is that kind of, some of the strategy that you tend to work on?
Use the psychology in a positive way.
Yeah,
absolutely. And for my savers out there, which in my generation, there's not a lot of us. We're much more of a spender generation, which speaks to the climate in which we grew up.
Sure.
But some of the things I do when I do come across a rare saver, one of the things I have to talk about is like, we have to do a lot of goal setting, because there is no point, honestly, there's no point saving money if you're not going to do anything with it. Of course, you want to build wealth over time. You want to have an emergency fund. You want to make sure that you're building wealth for retirement. But there's also people who just like cannot spend any money. And I have to ask said person, do you have goals? What is it that you want? Do you want to go on a vacation? Do you want to eventually buy a house? Do you want certain things? Because at some point you have to make a concession that something is worth the money,
Sure.
So there's and of course, everybody is on such a spectrum of that. And some people are interesting where they're very, very frugal in very specific things, but then so money fluent, I guess, and other things. Like a huge part where I see that the most is in people's health. I can't afford to go to the doctors. I can't have a therapy session. I can't like order this supplement that's going to be really expensive that could really help my emotional and mental health. But I'm okay with spending like a ton of money on a personal customized shirt, or wine cooler, or whatever it might be, wine tumbler, or things like that, where people are so much more they're so much more apt to online shop or have a really nice time out in the old port than they are to really take care of themselves, because the cost of health, it's boring and it's high.
Yeah, that and I think some of it goes back to the instant gratification aspect of our society. When I spend $100 in the airport, I know I had a good time. I spend $100 and something dollars on something for my health, and I've got to do that over and over again, probably, to see some of the results that I might be looking for, depending on what part of our health we're talking about. But I really liked where you went there with that, as far as it sounded a little bit like you were talking to the aspect of spending money to make money. So for those savers who have those goals, spending some of all of that they've saved, but on things that are going to make them more and give them even more opportunity to do things in their life that they maybe didn't think were possible, but they've got to part with the money a little bit to make that happen. And I fall in the camp of someone who looks at doing that spend money to make money. The investing in the health arena is a great way to do that, because if we can't physically, mentally, and emotionally do what we need to do that's bringing that money in, that's providing us with the current lifestyle we're living, or set us up for the lifestyle we want to live, none of it matters anyways, right? So that's meshing those two together, I think, is a fantastic example of prioritizing where to spend money to make money.
It is. It's so important. And it's hard. A lot of times, like, the people that I want to work with so badly are not the people who are really ready to really look their finances like right in the eye, and like really face it head on.
Sure.
And one of the huge groups that I have a lot of experience with and have always wanted to work with is people in the blue collar profession, whether it be plumbing, excavation, fishing, anything like that, because you have people who actually in most of those industries right now are making fantastic money.
Yes.
But they are not regarded as a wealthy group. Like, nobody's like, you know what, I'm just dying to leave it all and go be a fisherman, right? Except for the people who have kind of grown up in that environment. And it's like, I grow up, I fish.
Sure.
But they're making great money. But you see all these areas and they're so depressed, and they're just like people who they're aging. They are a lot of times trying to ease the pain of their aging in very unhealthy ways. They are unhappy with their financial situation, and eventually they age their body early. They should go into an early retirement when you work that hard with your body. Yeah. And they are ready and they have a disability, or they really need to just stop, but they can't because they've never set themselves up. But they make so much money that there's absolutely no reason that they shouldn't be able to do that, or at least switch careers at like around 35, 40, when their body really starts to give out and they could maybe do something different that's a little more hands-off.
Sure.
And that's a group that I've always wanted to work with, especially a lot of them too don't have a lot of those kinds of workers get 1099 instead of W-2. And they also tend to accumulate a lot of tax debt. There tends to be a lot of issues that go along with all those things. And right. I'm dying to work with that group, but nobody's ever open, who I've talked to anyways. I'm sure there's plenty of people who are, but I haven't talked to anybody who wants to change. You can't force anybody to be better with their finances. You can't force somebody to psychologically look at what they're doing. All you can do is hope, you can advertise your services and hope that people who come to you are like ready and willing to actually put in the work. Cause I can't wave a magic wand and make your debt go away, right? Who actually are ready to commit to being something different,
Yeah. You hit the nail on the head with that one. It's a hardy group, it's a hardy, like prideful, nose to the grindstone type of group. And, on my side of things as a physical therapist, those people, a lot of them think, well, I have a very physical job, so I don't necessarily need to, I am strong. I move all the time. I'm walking all the time. But, so the investment in their physical health is even further on the back burner, right? To your point about their body wearing out and needing to set themselves up to maybe retire sooner, right? But on the flip side of that, investing in some of their physical health and performance might actually allow them to not have to retire as soon as they might think, because they can, so it goes back to our investment conversation, spending money to make money a little bit. Doing so into your health and also doing so into your financial wellness can extend a lot of things in life that you didn't expect could be as extended, and allow you to fully enjoy them. And I think that's the other part of the wellness connection here, is that setting yourself up financially, both now, but even more importantly for the future, is going to allow you to enjoy what you've worked so stinking hard for leading up to that time that you finally get to retire.
Yeah, no, it is. It's like, I always try to tell people, like, what's the point? Are you on the treadmill of life, or do you actually want to enjoy something more later on? And,
Right.
And honestly too, one thing, and it's important, and I don't think a lot of people realize it, but our society it's built on the idea that you get married very young, you either pull finances, or somebody like works on everything that needs to be worked on in the home and the other person works. And over time, you have kids, you retire, and you only make it about 10 to 15 years into your retirement, and then you die. And if you don't die, you move in with adult children who will take you in and have already like made a special edition of the house for you, and you're good to go. Nowadays, I mean, even just the idea of retirement accounts are actually pretty new. I don't believe they came into play until around like the 70s or 80s. So they're a pretty new concept.
Wow.
And nowadays, you have people who aren't getting married until way later, or they're getting married and they're getting divorced, which actually puts them backwards in the financial space. And then they are retiring and they are living long lives with lots of health complications that are expensive. And their kids don't live near them. They maybe live in a different country or across the world, and don't have a lifestyle that's conducive to even, maybe they don't even have a home at that point. They're renting and there's no room for you. And so we're not living in a world that supports the current climate that a lot of us find ourselves in. And so you got to be tricky, because it's like, especially back to the blue collar worker type thing, a lot of these people who work, they don't have the time or the schedule to go to the bank or the doctor or the dentist, because by the time they're done working, the day is over, and people won't, the doctors aren't going to see you on the weekend, and they can't like sit down and work with a financial advisor on Sunday or whatever. And it's tricky. Or if you're a fisherman, you don't even know when your days off are going to be, because it depends on the weather. So, that's where you would need a spouse or like some type of partner to be on the back end, like doing all these things while you're pulling these crazy hours. But that's just not how our world is set up anymore. So you have people just working themselves to death and working their bodies into the ground, and they're not getting any of that like admin work, so to speak, in their life done.
Yeah. And it's very easy to then prioritize that stuff that isn't getting done when you have the time off, rather than prioritizing some other thing. It can be a vicious cycle. So having the tools in place to correct that is huge. And that's a common theme that comes up on a lot of the conversations we have here on this podcast, is little small corrections, little small steps or small pivots that are going to allow you to actually take some things off of your plate, even though it feels like you're adding something onto your plate, but in the short term, it might feel like you're adding something onto your plate, but down the road, once it starts working for you, you're actually unburdening yourself in more ways than one, usually when we make these types of corrections and these steps toward these changes.
Well, it's like anything in technology, when a new piece of technology is first introduced, it actually slows your process down, because it's going to have glitches and kinks, but over time it's way more efficient. And it's like that. You have to kind of correct. I tell people all the time, it's such a small tip, but a lot of people don't think about it. I say to people, pick one day, like 3 months down the road, and take that day off. Tell whoever you're working for, or if you're working for yourself, tell yourself, that is one day you cannot work. Make it a Monday, Tuesday, whatever. Call every single doctor that you have and say, this is when I want to schedule my appointment. Schedule all of your annual, biannual, whatever, physicals, checkups on one day. And then you've taken one day off to get it all done, instead of always having to like take the morning off or take this afternoon off or whatever. And it's so much easier to kind of get it all done in one foul swoop.
For sure. Hey, that's a great tip. Yeah. Or meet with your financial advisor, right?
Yeah, exactly. Everything.
Right. Knock it. Yeah. A couple times a year, just knock it all out of the park. Fantastic. So I've got a couple more questions for you, Kristen, but before I ask you those final two questions, I just want to give you an opportunity to tell people where they can learn more about the DaVinci Experience, your camp that you're working into some childcare, and more about where to find more information about your financial advising services through DaVinci Life Design. So tell us where we can learn more if people listening are interested in learning more.
Yeah, absolutely. So my DaVinci Experience, which is my science and arts summer day camp, where we really promote free thinking and science and arts. We do a different theme every single week. So parents who are maybe on a schedule and have to put their child in the same place for convenience will have continuity, but the child will never do the same thing twice, which is great.
Oh,
All
awesome.
the information. Yeah, it's a really fun program. It's very much promotes a lifelong love of learning. And all our information can be found right on www.davinciexperience.com. And we actually are rebuilding our website. Currently just has stuff about our summer camp, but we are going through a rebuild right now. And come late June, there should be information about our year-round childcare, because we are trying to open a nursery, daycare, preschool facility in Freeport right now called DaVinci Childcare. And it's going to be a fantastic preschool daycare program that really focuses on pulling in Montessori principles mixed with the creative curriculum, which is the very modern current curriculum, and pulling in principles from a responsive classroom, essentially, to really create a free thinking, inclusive, nature-based, earthy, homey environment that allows children to learn and really kind of grow their own individual interests. We kind of tailor make the curriculum based on the children in it. So it's going to be great. So that's where you can find us. And then for DaVinci Life Design, you can find me right at www.davincilifedesign.com. I am on social media. I'm not the best at social media, but I am on LinkedIn and I am on Facebook. And I'm sort of kind of getting my feet wet in Instagram, but I do have some great blog articles that I have written, and I've been kind of slowly writing more about just different tips and things regarding finances that you can find on the website, but you can also find them on my social media as well.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, definitely encourage everyone to check that out. I know from some personal experience that childcare and really good childcare that you're confident in can be really hard to come by right now. So, I encourage everyone to check out both of those things and find some of the blog posts and all that stuff. Great stuff over there. So the last two questions here for you, Kristen. Number one is, what is your definition of strength?
That's a really good question. I think strength really speaks to the ability to pivot and just keep going in this world. I think so much of this world we don't control. There's so little that we actually have control over. And I know people, anxiety and depression runs high, and it can be so easy in so many instances to just kind of give up, whether it's on your finances, on your health, on your career, on whatever it might be. I myself have had a lot of struggle as a person who, at this point in my life, I am legally blind. So I'm not like in the dark, but I can't drive, I can't see faces, I can't read, things like that.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time as my eyesight kind of declined from 17 now to age 25. When you kind of are entering the prime of your life, I felt like, wow, I'm actually like kind of now emulating like a grandmother. But what you have to do, whether it's that, or it's, someone in your family has cancer, or you got laid off, or whatever is going on in life, it's so important to stay focused on your goal. And true strength, I think, is just keep plugging along. It's not always perfect. It can't always be the best, but if you are able to stick to your goals and be okay with setbacks and continuously work on triumphs, no matter what's going on, it pays off in dividends, and it really speaks to your tenacity and strength as a person.
Fantastic. Incredible answer. That's great. Awesome. And the second question I have is, what is your true purpose in life?
I go back and forth on that because I am one of those people who always people always say like my biggest weakness is I have way too many interests.
Mm,
I do too many things and I don't know exactly what my true passion. I have so many and I don't always know like what is my purpose, but I think that I've always been kind of an old soul. And I think whether it is working with children or helping people with their finances
mm.
or public speaking. I actually love public speaking. I have done a few like sermons at my church and I've talked in a few different platforms. I absolutely love it, to kind of motivate individuals, whatever kind of avenue I'm going down. I think that my common theme is that I'm always trying to help teach,
Mm.
and help people grow. I think I'm very good at conveying messages where a lot of people have so much to say, but it can be really hard to actually convert what you have to say in your mind to something that people will understand. And I think that
Yeah.
that is something that I'm really good at. And I love teaching children. I love teaching people about finances. I love motivating others. I
Yeah.
love to just help people be the best them they can be. So I guess teacher in a way.
Sure. Sure. Awesome. Great. Well, you're definitely fulfilling that role in multiple different ways. And it's incredible to see how you've meshed together all of these different things into something that has a very common theme of teaching and inspiring and leading others in those ways. So good for you for working so hard on fulfilling that purpose. That's fantastic.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you again, Kristen. I really appreciate you giving us some time and coming on the podcast to talk. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This has been wonderful.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome. And everybody, I encourage you to check out everything that Kristen has to offer there. All of those links that she mentioned will be in the show notes. So check those out. If you found value in this episode, please be a friend and tell a friend. Share this episode with someone you know, love, and care about who can find some value in it as well. We'll be back here next week with another very inspiring interview. Back-to-back weeks, we have some very inspiring entrepreneurs here that are going to be helping you all with different areas of your wellness and maybe some of your own motivation to go out there and fulfill more of your true purpose in life. So until then, have a great week, and we will see you back here next time on the Strength for Your Purpose podcast.